One really important aspect that I want to address when it comes to pursuing your life purpose and being in the process of living aligned to it is that you need to accept the cost that comes with it. And what do I mean by the cost? I mean the long hours you're going to have to put, the nights, and all of your efforts that you're going to have to sacrifice on this journey, no matter which path you're traveling and what you're doing, to make mistakes, overcome failures, and deal with the hard emotions that comes up. When I was running my agency nearly 2 years ago now, and to put that into context, that was during a time when I was in 10th grade in my sophomore year, when everything in school started ramping up and we're preparing for the big final exam that I'm taking later on during that year. And there was just a period of time when I was just so locked in with this vision of building an amazing company and accomplishing all of these great things, and the vision of being a teenage millionaire where I would sacrifice basically everything to achieve this vision. And of course, over time, your vision probably changes as you try different things out. I mean, for me, right now, my vision has drastically changed from just grinding something for the sake of money to building something that is greater, that actually gives an impact to the world, which is Awaken Teens, which is this channel on helping more teenagers increase their awareness and living from their higher selves. But still, the core principles for whatever vision that you're trying to realize is actually the same. And this means that there will be times when you need to make harsh decisions and choose between working on your vision versus gaining fulfillment from other aspects of your life, right? Like, your personal life, your mental health, your physical health. And it's always about opportunity cost, right? Because when you spend time working on this thing, then it means that you don't have time learning on that thing. And that's basic, Econ 101 that we learn in school. And one of the big costs that I realized I have to accept when I was running my agency was time. And what I mean by time as like a big cost, this means that I remember one day there was 3 discovery calls that I had scheduled during the same day. And that was actually during the school day as well. So I had a whole full 9 to 5 in school. And my call was scheduled one super early in the morning and one during school time and one late at night. And these clients or these leads were huge startups. And they're the perfect fit for my ideal client profile. These were basically clients which I saw as huge opportunities as they completely matched who I was selling to. And in this scenario, like most people without a strong vision would take it easy and they'll be like, oh yeah, let's just reschedule a call. But then for me, I was so driven to the point I knew how important it was to move these guys down the pipeline and move them forward and really meet them. So then I decided to take the calls even though it was during school time. And this means that I did have to step away from class and excuse myself to use the bathroom during times. And I did have to find a quiet place during lunch to take these calls. And what ended up happening actually was I managed to sign one of the 3 clients a week after. And it was one of the biggest clients that I've ever signed in my whole career of running an agency. And really just looking back, I'm super grateful that I've taken that call during that time, because I realized that if I've taken that call maybe later on, then there might be more scheduling issues and I may not have performed as well as I did. So what we need to understand is that even though you're going to have costs accumulate over time, no matter if it's time or something else, there will be moments when you feel pretty nasty and pretty shit during the present moment. And you're also going to have moments when you're going to have huge wins from all of the accumulated sacrifices that you've made. So what do you want to accept? And that's the ultimate question, right? Do you want to accept being someone who lives a mundane life? Or do you want to accept the fact that you have one life? And in this one life, you want to accomplish amazing things. And this means that you may have to sacrifice this aspects of your life and that aspect, as those aspects may not be some things that you find most fulfilling or most impactful to you. Reflecting back along this journey of some of the biggest costs that I have to make, that I have to sacrifice in order to, grow to be the person that I am today, and building all of these amazing things, learning a lot about myself, learning a lot about the world, is I have to accept that it was going to be a lonely path. And what do I mean by a lonely path? I'm not victimizing myself here, but to the point where a lot of people around you may not understand the things that you're studying, or may not be walking and doing the same thing that you're doing, because they're aiming for a more mundane life, right? They're not really looking for a bigger vision. Like a lot of people, a lot of my friends, they're all, just trying to let school pass by every single day and follow the traditional path. But as someone who wants something bigger and who wants something greater and who is hungry for more, like I have to accept that I'm only one of the few individuals, or if not the only individual, who's going to do that. So loneliness was something that I had to battle along the way, and really thinking on whether or not I'm even doing the right thing. And one big thing initially when I found when you're trying to do something new is motivating yourself to achieve this vision. For example, like when I was building my agency, like I was one of the first ones, I think, in my city to even do such a thing at such a young age, not meaning to boast or anything, but I basically had no family members to support me, no friends, and not really anyone to understand me in like a deeper level on what I'm trying to do. Like everyone was seeing me in like a crazy lens. They're like, why are you doing this? Right? Like when people saw me talking to strangers and those strangers were my clients, they're like, oh my days, what is this guy doing? But then what got me moving forward was willpower, right? And to a certain extent, willpower does get you to a certain point, such as, those days when you feel like you wake up and you just have a boost of motivation for some reason and you're pumped to hustle. But then during the days when I realize I have low energy, those are going to be the days when you're truly tested, right? And assuming that you're going to slack off some time, like, are you going to go into this whole negative spiral of shaming yourself or for slacking off, or are you going to accept that slacking off was a past? Right? Guilt is really one of the big things that I've realized I've wasted a lot of time in during my journey, was guilting myself for not being productive enough or not being effective enough, when in reality you just have to accept it and move on, because the more you focus on these negative things, the more time you're basically wasting when you could have invested that time doing other stuff. So now I want to introduce to you a tool that have helped me accept these sacrifices and get over all of these hard days and all of these problems that I've been facing along my journey. And in the long run, I've really seen this tool being a super helpful companion just to help me actualize my vision and push forward from all of these struggles that I'm facing. And this tool is a two-step framework. And you'll see that the first part of this tool is more internal and mental programming, which is super useful to help you understand the sacrifices and the problems that you actually encounter on a deeper level, so then you can control it and master it, rather than having it control you, right? Because most of the time with these problems, we get overwhelmed by these problems. We keep thinking about it and we're letting those consume our brain. But instead, with this tool, I realized that if you just take more control and be more aware of why that problem actually comes out, then it actually plays a huge role in helping you detach from the problem, which is the second part of the tool, which is more externally focused and more practical. It will give you the long-term motivation to drive and inspire you to take action, especially when your willpower may not be as strong during particular days when you feel tired and everything like that. So this tool, which sounds super fascinating, which I'm super excited to show you guys, is called the ARAE framework. ARAE framework. So it's super easy to remember. You just have to remember the word array, and each letter stands for one aspect of the tool. So the first part of the tool will be the A and the R in the array word, and then the second part of the tool, which is more externally driven, is the A and the E, so the last two words of the four-letter word. So in the description of this video, I've also linked a handout for you for more guiding questions for each of the steps, so then you can also join along as we fill out all of these framework and show you how it works, and then you can apply this to whatever problems or whatever you're facing in life that you feel stuck with. And really, I found that it's been super helpful for me to look back into this paper, especially when I'm facing the same problem over and over again, and just reaffirm to myself that the problem is actually not part of me, but it's just a problem, right? Because most of the time we get too attached to the problem, we succumb to the problem to the point where it just gets all into our heads and we're unable to make progress. So this has been super useful to just lay out the problem itself on a piece of paper. All right, so breaking down the framework in greater detail, the first letter of the framework, A, represents aware. So being aware of the situation and just listing out what happened and some of the feelings that you felt when that problem or situation happened. So using the problem that I was facing when I was running my agency and having the lack of time itself, how I will be more aware of the situation is I will start by listing down what actually happened and how I felt, right? So literally just listing down and stating the obvious. I'm getting no sleep and time for school, which is causing me to feel exhausted and feeling depressed all the time. And I realize that I get overwhelmed by deadlines and feel super stressed when I have to cram all of my schoolwork and having to deliver client work for my business at the same time. And I also noticed that one of the fears that I have is not being efficient and maximizing my time, and having the fear of doing the wrong thing, and maybe also the fear of not doing enough, right? So just stating down the obvious and what you're fearing and what you're feeling is really the first step. And just to give you guys another example, when I was running my agency, I was also feeling super lonely, right? And what I observed when I was feeling lonely is that it made me question whether or not I'm in the right path or if my vision is possible. So I'll write that down. And I also remember there were times when I would cry in my room because there was just no one around me who understood what I was doing. And I also feel FOMO, fear of missing out, of not being a normal teenager whenever I, went on social media or whenever I saw my friends doing those average teenage things. And sometimes it makes me feel confused on whether or not I should continue pursuing the things I pursue. So again, it's just noting down and stating down the obvious of the problem. So after we acknowledge our feelings and what's been happening, the next step is going to be reprogram, which is understanding that the world operates in duality. And that means that no matter what situation you're in, there's always two sides of the story. So there's always normally a positive side and a negative side. So if you're focusing on a negative problem, just try to think about what the positive things are with this issue, right? So going back to the problem of the lack of time with running my agency, I can see it in another lens where I realize that by sacrificing the time that I could have spent with my friends, which I can be using to enjoy myself by doing this and doing that, that time allowed me to work on a vision that's for the greater good and achieve the awesome things that I've done, like at such a young age, such as signing my first client at 15 years old, right? So once you flip that over, you start to realize, damn, even though on the surface it may seem such a painful thing, on the other side, you can see the great rewards with doing these things and making these sacrifices. And that's the things that we need to remind ourselves whenever we're on this journey to pursue something greater. Going back to the aloneness example, how can I reprogram this? I can reprogram this by saying that, even though it may seem like I'm feeling alone in this journey, this means that I'm doing something unique, right? I'm setting myself as a role model to all of my friends and everyone around me. And I inspire others to get started on building amazing projects. And this gives me a distinct set of perspective for whatever I'm going to do in the future, no matter if it's, something traditional or if it's something entrepreneurial, right? It doesn't matter. And in addition, I can also find other like-minded individuals to connect on the internet. So, if I rethink back to the lonely problem, maybe I'm actually not that lonely, right? And even though I may need to spend time searching for the right community, I can still see how this will create lasting and beautiful relationships when I do find my tribe, when I do find my mates, right? So think about it as an opportunity for you to grow, an opportunity for you to discover a new area of yourself when you think about reprogramming this belief. And then once we reprogram and start to realize that it's actually not that bad of a problem at all, we have to start accepting that this is a past belief and seeing this as a stepping stone. And what do I mean by that? I mean accepting that that event during your life is in the past and there is some kind of teaching or some kind of learning you can get from it. And there are 3 ways to do this. So the first one is writing down what happened without dramatizing or minimizing the situation itself. Because one thing that you'll probably find when you're describing that situation back in part 1 in the aware section is that there's lots of emotions there. But then now, if we try to look at it in a more objective lens and really ask the question, what is the fact here? Is it really true that I'm facing this, or is there something deeper inside of it? So for example, how I'll be more objective in this situation, even though I know that time was a huge problem in the past, was I'll say something like, it is the fact that I'm only getting 6 hours of sleep with running my agency. And it is the fact that I'm spending only 30 minutes every day studying. And it's also the fact that I may be spending my 4-hour block for work slacking off with watching football highlights or scrolling LinkedIn sometimes. And really, by going through this process, you're going to be able to look at what you have to fix or what you may have to adapt or tweak in order to cause this problem to not happen that frequently in your life, or to completely fix the problem itself. And that requires us being objective and removing all of the heavy emotions that normally surfaces in our mind and normally buries the actual reasoning and the actual insight that we want to get from the problems that we face. So for my feeling of being alone with the agency path, I would say something like, it is a fact that no one else in my school or city is building an agency like myself. And it is a fact that I'm trying to achieve something greater than what's expected in society today. And it is a fact that I want to have people who I can relate to who are building the same thing as I am. So really, just by stating that, you kind of can see what you actually want, right? What do you actually want in order to fix this problem or fulfill this need that you have? And then afterwards, this next step is acknowledging that this is common amongst humanity. And what does that mean? That means recognizing that the problems that you're facing is not personalized to you, but then it's problems that everyone is facing or a lot of people are facing in the world. And this process will really help you realize that you're not the problem, because most of the time when you have a problem, you'll think that you're the only one facing this problem and you have a problem, right? Like, you are fundamentally flawed. But in reality, a lot of people face these problems. So by recognizing this, you're going to be able to forgive yourself and really accept that this is something that a lot of people face. So for example, going back to the problem on having the lack of time, I understand that it's absolutely human to slack off at times. Like, no one's going to be able to keep a perfect streak on not slacking off like every single day working in their lives, right? And I also understand that most successful people who are just getting started had to go through lots of trial and errors process with their systems and their projects, which incurs a lot of time costs, right? Even though I may be working on this, maybe the next month I realize I've been working on the wrong thing. But then a lot of people had to go through this experiment in order to find out what really works for them. So understanding that makes me feel less guilty for doing this. And then for the aloneness example, I understand that many young self-made entrepreneurs, if we think back to people like Steve Jobs, explored his passion individually with barely anyone believing his vision in the beginning. Like, we think back to the days when he was looking at computers, like, people thought he was crazy for, inventing the Mac, right? Like, no one ever expected that this was going to be something that you're holding or you're even watching with right now. And, it's going to take over the world and really have such a great impact. So, just having this understanding that you have a very unique vision that maybe not a lot of people would support you or would agree with you right now is actually can be also like a good sign, And then I also understand that everyone feels alone to a certain level, but I may face it in a different form. And this is a huge one, because maybe you'll feel lonely in this area of your life where no one is supporting you career-wise, but then someone else might also feel lonely in another aspect of their life where people don't understand them. And it's really normal for us to have areas where just no one understands you, or you haven't found the right person yet, because we're all distinct individuals. And really, that's where the power of finding your own tribe over time, right, of filtering your friends and seeing which ones are aligned with you. And finally, another way to really accept these beliefs or these problems that you have is offering kindness to yourself. So a really good exercise is writing as if you are speaking to a close friend going through the same challenge. So for example, if I had another friend who was also building an agency themselves and they face this lack of time because they have to balance school and they have to balance client work, I would say something like, it's okay, man, that you feel super rushed, that you've wasted a lot of time in the past. You were doing your best with the system that you had during the past, right? And as a visionary, you're always growing and always learning more systems, which will get you closer to the ideal timetable, ideal schedule that you're looking for. So you should continue pushing and continue trying things out and never back down, right? So you'll probably say something like that to your friend. So by writing it like that, then you can use that and say it to yourself. So then you can offer yourself this sense of kindness and this sense of forgiveness as well. And finally, after we fully accept and embrace this belief that we have to evolve from it. And what does it mean by evolve? Evolve means actually taking action and doing things that reinforces your new belief system. So for example, if I really want to combat this problem of having the lack of time and I really want to grow out of it and realize that I've accomplished a lot of things in a less period of time, what I will do is I will dedicate time learning and testing more systems to help me optimize my time, right? And it sounds so obvious, but the problem is that we don't go through all of these steps and we don't lay out the actions, or when we do lay out the actions, it's already too late and we've wasted a lot of time. So what we have to do is lay down the practical and specific steps that we can do tangibly, right? Not abstractly, like we can always say, oh, we're going to learn more about this, learn more about that. But then you want to be as specific as possible. Talk about what you're going to do, how you're going to do it. Like, I will dedicate time doing the 80-20s exercise frequently, where I'll identify 20% of the inputs that leads to 80% of the results and cut the 80% of inputs that leads to 20% of the results on a weekly basis, right? You can see how specific that is, because if you're not specific, then you're more likely not going to take action because you don't even know what to do, right? It's like you have to give yourself instructions on how to evolve from your problems and from your old beliefs. And another example that I had when I wanted to really balance school and building projects is giving myself the break at the end of the week to dedicate my time entirely to contemplate and schedule for the following week, so then I can ensure that everything is balanced on my plate, right? And really making these small commitments and doing these actions will take you to your new belief and take you to the next level and really liberate you from all of these old habits and old beliefs or old problems that you have, so then you could live more fulfilled and aligned. So now, once you have all 4 parts all filled out and all thought through, what you can do is you can combine all 4 parts together and use this as an affirmation practice for you to break free from any of the problems or any of the beliefs that may come up in the future times. So reading the entire ARAE framework for the problem that I have on facing the lack of time when running my agency, here's what I'm going to get when I put them all together, right? I'm aware that getting no sleep and time for school is causing me to feel exhausted and depressed at times. And I get overwhelmed by deadlines and feel super stressed when I have to cram school while having to deliver client work for my business. And I fear not being efficient and maximizing my time. And I fear doing the wrong things and not doing enough. However, by reprogramming and understanding the duality of the world, I acknowledge that even though it may seem like I'm feeling alone in this journey, this means that I'm going to be doing something unique and setting myself up as a role model to those around me. I inspire others to get started on building amazing projects, and this gives me a distinct set of perspective for whatever I do in the future. I can also find other like-minded individuals using the internet, and even though I may need to spend time searching for the right community, I can see how this will create lasting and beautiful relationships when I do so. Moving to the next A, right? Furthermore, I accept that my past beliefs are stepping stones, seeing them as areas for growth. Reflecting on my past more objectively, it is a fact that I'm only getting 6 hours of sleep with running my agency. It is also a fact that I'm only spending 30 minutes every day studying. And it is a fact that I'm going to be sometimes slacking off during my work blocks, watching football highlights or scrolling LinkedIn at times. But I understand that it's absolutely human to slack off at times. I also understand that most successful people who are just getting started had to go through lots of trial and errors with their systems and projects, which incurs time cost. Therefore, I detach from my past by knowing that it's okay that I felt super rushed and wasted lots of time in the past. I was doing my best with the systems that I was using in the past. And as a visionary, I'm always growing and learning more about different systems, which will get me closer to the ideal timetable that I'm looking for. Finally, I evolve from this problem by taking action. And taking action means dedicating time learning and testing more systems to help optimize my time. For example, I will dedicate time doing the 80-20 exercise frequently, where I identify 20% of the inputs that leads to 80% of the results. I also hold myself accountable for deadlines by committing to posting on LinkedIn for 90 days and give myself breaks at the end of the week to dedicate time entirely to contemplate and schedule for the following week so I can balance everything on my plate. So you can see how we gradually grow through step by step in this process. And really at the end, what you should end up with is things that you can practically implement to your daily life. So then you start living your new belief rather than having all of these fluffs and these ideas that, oh, you really want to change, but you don't know how to. So this was a really powerful framework that I use whenever I face any problems. And hopefully you can start using it as well. So then you can stop victimizing yourself and start living more aligned and more fulfilled. Before wrapping this video up, one important thing is that it's super important to understand that you need to go through all of the letters in order if you want to successfully reprogram these sacrifices. Like most people, they will go through, A, R, and then A, but then they will miss out on the E, which, in the short run, it does help you reframe these beliefs. But then without action, again, you can't implement this in the long run. And most likely, you'll fail and go back to your old beliefs. I highly recommend you to also consider sticking this worksheet on the walls of your bedroom so then you can look at it and really read through it whenever you need some kind of inspiration to work on, especially when you're building something bigger and when you're creating this vision of yourself, because most of the time, what you'll see is you're still going to unconsciously and unwillingly fall into these problems, and everyone's going to be facing these problems in this journey. But then by sticking on your wall and really just looking at it, it will give you a physical reminder of the new beliefs that you have and the bigger, grander life that you're building. And just by reading it, then you can start to realize that this actually isn't a problem, but it actually is a gift. So that's it from me for this video. Hope you guys found this framework at least interesting, as I know that it's going to be life-changing for any of you guys who decide to implement this framework and really commit to this path of living from your higher self. So yeah, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.